This is Barbara Emodi, and I thought I'd do something that I should have done a while ago, which is explain why I made the transition from teaching sewing, writing about sewing, and writing fiction. It was not a hard transition, so there is a story here. I taught sewing classes for 40 years, mainly of the continuing education when my kids were small or after work or on weekends, those types of things. I taught very many interesting people, and any of you who've ever been in a sewing or a knitting or a quilting class knows that the best part are the people there and the stories they tell. My first class, I had two brothers sign up. I was teaching at a technical university in Australia, and these two men showed up. They wanted to learn how to make pink velvet pants. They were both brothers. They had both been forward scouts in the jungles in the Vietnam War, and they were welders. Not my typical expectation of what a sewing student would be. However, they were marvelous. And I showed them how to sew. We got out the pattern, and they looked at me and they said, "Got it. It's just like sheet metal work. You get her flat, you cut her up, and you make her round." And that's when I fell in love with teaching, because I realized how many characters I'd meet. So that was my first class. I was about 25. So many years I taught sewing. And in my classes, I realized people came to make things, they came to learn things, but they mainly came to be with other people who were creative and to get to know them. So I just began to collect these crazy stories. And they blended in over the years into characters in my head, of a little bit of this. You know, there really was, Rolly in the Gasper's Cove series is a psychologist who takes over a general store. I actually visited a general store in rural Nova Scotia that was run by a practicing psychologist who'd come home to help out the family business. It was a complete disaster, but he had a recliner at the front and he dispensed the most wonderful advice. The store didn't last too long because he wasn't good with things like the cash register, but he really struck me. And my husband came home one day and said, "There's a guy at work, Duck McDonald." And I said, "Duck McDonald?" He said, "Yeah, his name is Donald McDonald. What else are we going to call him?" And I filed that away. So my editors at C&T Publications have a joke that when they read something and they think this is a little out there, they query me, and the joke is usually that part is based in some level on truth and something that actually happened. So I felt that my mind, because of the world that sewing and knitting and all the other things I do exposed me to, the humans I met, my mind sort of became almost like a junk drawer of like little details that I loved, and I wanted to make something with them. It's like the fabric and the buttons on your shelf. They sit there for years and you think, look, it's great stuff. I've got to make something with it. So I just started to write fiction. Gasper's Cove I was having lunch with someone whose husband, elderly husband, was in a group of golfers. They've now since disbanded over time. But they call themselves the Gaspers, and they played 9 holes. They'd have lunch because they all said they were at the last gasp of their golfing careers. So I took the whole concept of last gasp when I was inventing a small town in the middle of nowhere in Nova Scotia on the coast of the Eastern Shore, which is not a very well-known part of the province, and the idea of having this little cove that everyone else would think was the last gasp was a place for me to put the main conclusion of my entire time on this earth, which is there is nothing ordinary about ordinary people. So that's why I write. That's where my stories come from, and that's my conviction, because I know that my readers aren't ordinary people either, and they will recognize themselves or someone they know in my characters, and even if they don't, I know they'll be very sympathetic to Valerie Rankin, the protagonist, my main character, who is a lot of me, a lot of other people I've written, and Darlene, her best friend, who in fact is based on my best friend, someone who texted me from a beach in Cuba once and said, "Oh my God, I'm Darlene, aren't I?" And I said, "Yes, you are." She said her husband had recognized, who'd also read the book, had recognized her first. So welcome to Gasper's Cove. I am amazed at what is going on there, and there are a few things going to happen in the next couple of books that if I didn't know it was true, I wouldn't believe it could happen. So thank you for following my sewing, blogs, videos, books all these years. And if you enjoy light fiction, the sort of thing that you would read hopefully for a bit of a laugh, a bit of a relax, and just to get away from it. And actually, I was thinking myself today, this is my writing coffee mug given by my daughter-in-law, who's wonderful. It's got a little chip in it because my husband sort of loads the dishwasher as if he was standing in a chair above it dropping things in. Is anybody else married to anybody like that? He's so helpful. But I was thinking I also need some mugs that would say, "I think I've had enough, I'm going to Gasper's Cove." I'll meet you there.